Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty 10, you know the drill by now, the Twitter handle. And I'm joined today by the wonderful Alison McConnell. Alison, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Tony.
And the effervescent Sean Martin at Sean Martin TC.
I was wondering what descriptor you would use for me there, but
is that all right? Am I allowed to call you
that's
that?
Fine. No, that's acceptable.
Happy with that?
That's all right.
That's good. Right, guys, as you know, we do the housework in the morning and we big up our sponsors. The One Football app. Get downloading the One Football app. You won't regret it. It's the one-stop football shop for scores, news, lineups, transfer rumours, live streaming, match highlights, you name it. It's all there. You can immerse yourself in the digital football world and have the best personal experience out there. You know what to do. Download the One Football app, and we thank them very much for their sponsorship. And as you can see, running along the bottom start, you can enjoy a free trial on us for 30 days, covering the club that you love. You've joined us, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Now, Sean, I'm going to come to you first because you're breaking your own edict here, as you said, off there. And I'll say two words to you and you can wax lyrical. Jordan Larsson.
No, you're right. I have broken my own edict with you two there, haven't I? Because I keep harping on about waiting until a report has got at least a bit of firmness to it with regards to Celtic. And this quite simply hasn't. It's only because of his surname, but I couldn't help myself. I thought would indulge me, indulge both, all three of us actually. But it's been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano that he's going to be released in a free from Spartak Moscow. He's on loan at AIK just now, alongside Mikael Lustig, if that means anything to you. But that expires on June the 30th, and then he'll be a free agent after that. So there's plenty of comments already coming in, like no brainer, all that stuff. I know. But basically, I mean, if we're going to treat it as a hypothetical exercise, which is all it can be just now, I would make a case that there's a massively positive case to be made in terms of a box ticking perspective, if you want to put it that way. His age, for instance, only turned 25 last week, so that's a tick. The fee, he'll be a free agent, so that's a tick. His player profile, I've not went deep dive into it quite yet, Tony, but he can play across the front line. He's come off the left in the past few, but in the past few years, it's mostly through the middle or from the right. He's picked up 70 goal contributions, which is 56 goals and 14 assists, and just over 14,000 top-level competitive minutes, which is the equivalent of about 158 games, which is very decent for his age, and given the fact, as I say, he gets shifted across the front line. He's a left-footer as well. He's obviously a fledgling Sweden international alongside Karl Starfelt, so I think that's a tick as well. Now, again, hypothetically, but wages, I'm unsure about that one, in all honesty. At Spartak, you've been on a really good pay packet. Couldn't put an exact figure on it without corroboration, obviously, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't upwards of 20k a week over there. So I'm unsure about ticking this one, as there are teams across Europe who might offer him and could offer him more than Celtic would. However, and this is Retro Celtic put in a comment that I'll put up on the screen in 2 seconds, the marketing aspect for Celtic, Larsson legitimately on the back of a Celtic top again, that's an open goal even without the number 7, so I think that's a tick. Pressure, Tony, fond memories of Celtic and Glasgow is one thing, but actually wearing the hoops and the pressure of his dad's legacy, that's quite another. He might not want that. Then again, he is named after Michael Jordan, so perhaps pressure is his thing. Either way, we can't tick that box either. The other thing, though, I think, which kind of gets often overlooked is the kind of amalgamation of ambition and personal circumstances. His personal circumstances is that he's a fairly new dad. His son was born last summer. Presumably that would lend itself to settling somewhere rather than flitting about clubs on loan or clubs that he might end up getting put on loan from, that kind of thing. But in terms of ambition, that loan deal, as I say, with AIK officially ends on June the 30th. But it's worth noting that Helsingborg were reportedly interested at the time as well, which is obviously an emotional tie, albeit one probably marred by that pitch invasion when they get relegated. But he chose AIK because he said they fitted in better with him in terms of the sport and that it helped him in his ambition to take a step out into Europe again. The Champions League is the European stage to play on, and he's never done it. So I think you can probably tick that box as well.
Anything to add to that, Alison, or do we just wind up the briefing right here and now? I think John's kind of went out in a blaze of
I'm
glory,
not sure
really.
whether Sean's in favour of a move or not. Listen, I think his name is what links him with Celtic.
Yeah.
I think that would be the only substance behind it. I would take your point about Sean, I would take all your points that you made. But whether or not there is any genuine traction in it, I'm not quite so sure. I actually do wonder, the one point that you mentioned about the pressure and coming and, stepping into fairly substantial shoes, I would wonder about that. I think that would be quite, it could potentially be quite suffocating. I think it depends very much on your personality. We know the personality of Henrik Larsson. We know what he was like. He was very cool. He was very, he coped with pressure very well. I don't know what Jordan Larsson's like at all in terms of a player or his temperament or how he would view that. But I do think it would feel like massive boots to fill.
242 goals and 315 appearances. Okay, that's what he's trying to fill. Those stats are ingrained in my mind. I think if you're a romantic like me, you always think, yep, that thing could happen. But I think Andrew's not the sentimental type, is he? And I don't think we would buy him on sentiment or a whim. I think you make a good case, Sean, with your pros, and very much pros, not very many cons. I think I was speaking to Alison off air and I said he was a player who was reputed to be worth 15 million like a couple of years ago. If you could get him on a free, that ticks a lot of boxes. The very fact that you could get Larsson in a Celtic shirt's a win-win for the club as well. I mean, they would just fly out the door. But again, I go back to Alison's point there. It is pressure from the get-go. And people say, he's his own man, and he is his own man. But what his dad did for the club is monumental. I've just quoted his goal stats there, and he is arguably of the generation that followed us, your generation, Sean, possibly the greatest player to have ever played for the club, and that's a real. That could become, an albatross round your neck if things don't go to plan.
Can I just say one thing? I interviewed Henrik Larsson about, I think it might have been about 5 or 6 years ago now, possibly longer, but roughly, just as Jordan Larsson was emerging into professional football, and I think he'd been capped at under 21 level, and he was playing for Helsingborg at the time. He just came in. Remember, the two of them dovetailed for a small amount of time. Yeah. And Henrik Larsson said to me, he's better than I was at his age just now. He's a better player and he's got better potential. So I think it is a really interesting question. I think for any player who follows in the footsteps of a parent who played professional sport, I think it is a different kind of pressure, because I think it's inevitable that there are very weighty comparisons made between the two. But I think having the fact he established himself at Helsingborg maybe just opened his eyes, and maybe taken the formative years in your career used to that kind of pressure. The fact that they were both, Henrik Larsson was a really iconic player there too, and obviously the Swedish thing in terms of the national team. But it's an interesting one. I always remember him just saying, and he was saying off the record too quite a bit about it, just how he felt he's always reading of the game, his movement, his awareness were all more mature than what he was at the same age, which I always found fairly interesting. And I know from a parent's point of view, it's maybe different. Like, we're all skewered when we look at our own kids and stuff like that. But I still think it raised an eyebrow at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've no doubt that the boy could possibly handle the pressure. You would never know unless Celtic take a punt. But for a free transfer, it's maybe something that's worth investigating, John, don't you think?
Potentially, and I do actually think, albeit, yes, I've not went into the deep dive yet, but cursory glance and having kind of occasionally kept tabs on him and seen him for Sweden stuff, I do actually think he would suit working under Ange Postecoglou. But as I say, and as Alison said, the reality of actually being at Celtic might be something else. He actually did say a few years ago now, like, remember he's only just turned 25, so just because he said something a few years ago, Jordan Larsson, I mean, not Henrik, doesn't necessarily make it still true, but he did say a few years ago that he did want to make sure that he carved his own career, which I would say he's done
he has carved his own
job so far, David Gillespie making that point, that's the only reason he can see to not approach it in any way, even to sound it out. But as I say, he did mention that. I think it's easier for sons of footballing legends, not just Celtic legends, if they don't play the same position as the father. I think that makes it a wee bit easier. He does essentially play the same position. He plays up front, albeit he's left-footed and he can come off the right a lot more. Whereas obviously Henrik was a centre forward for Celtic. He obviously played slightly different positions elsewhere for Feyenoord and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just indulged myself with it, Tony, totally and utterly. It carried away, get swept away on it. Ignored my own edict that I've stuck to for the last few weeks.
Well, Beach Boy says this. So because his dad is a club legend, Celtic back out the chance to sign a hugely potential international player and let others swoop. Nonsense. We're not saying that they should back out the chance. We're saying if Celtic are interested and they want to do it, it's something that Ange thinks would work, then by all means, go ahead. We're just pointing out the pros and cons of it. That's all we're doing. And as you say, there is no concrete link. It's just merely the fact
that surname. It's just the surname. That's what it is.
Is available as a free agent, and it's his dad's name that's linking him with the club. So, time will tell on that one, Alison, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you know how it works at football clubs. The manager, the scouting staff identify players, positions they want to strengthen. They have a list of players that they've identified that suit the needs. They think can come in and add to the pool of talent that are there. I'm not sure if Jordan Larsson was an existing name on that list, but I would find it hard to think that when someone becomes available, you automatically think, oh, he's free, we should go and get him. I think he would have to have caught the eye at some point prior to this. There would have to be a scope before this that Celtic would be aware of him to think, does he fit in and does he add to the squad and does he strengthen and does he have what we need at the minute?
Look, it's a sign. Look how many viewers we've got. Oh, it was 242 there.
I don't think for a minute he would have been on any list because I don't think that Celtic would have been able to afford them if it was an open market anyway. Given that he was Spartak and stuff in the contract, and I just don't think that he would have been on any list apart from the surname again. That would have been the only reason to keep tabs on him. Speaking of his dad, sorry, Tony.
No, I was 242 and 7 with the numbers. There you go.
No, it's speaking of his dad. I mean, this is just a wee aside. I was saying to Tony, when I was a wee guy, Henrik Larsson obviously was the man, and I actually managed to pick up Larsson as a bit of a nickname when I was a wee guy, but it wasn't, unfortunately, because of my footballing ability or my dreadlocks, or I was particularly great at chipping Stefan Klos. It was because he took Jordan onto the Parkhead pitch a fair few times, like the hoops we did it again in 01-02, friendly stuff, Trophy Day in 04, etc. All of those times. And a couple of older kids noticed we seemingly bore a wee bit of resemblance to each other at the time with the short hair and stuff. For what it's worth, he's definitely winning in the hair stakes these days. I don't know if you saw him, but I've got the same do, and he's let the curls flow. But that's a wee bit of an aside there for you, taking you back to the absolute top tier patter of early 2000s St Patrick's.
Are you having that?
I think you're just making us feel old. Sorry, I think you're just making us feel ancient here. This is our working life. Tony and I have been sitting in press boxes working at this. This is like...
Are you having that, Alison, that your man was called Larsson?
No, I'm not having it.
Do you have any
Celtic player you want to be known as?
Yeah,
Alison?
loads of dealings with him. I was at Celtic from 2000. I was at Celtic from September 2000 to July 2004. Yeah, had tons of dealings.
Because he did seem to be about. I don't know if it was maybe just for the bigger games or certain games he took it, when if he was at most of the games and stuff. And I know you said Henrik was a wee bit.
Oh, sorry.
I meant Jordan.
No, they would just be kids, you know. No, not at all. Sorry, I completely got the wrong end of the
No, it's
stick.
all right. No, it's fine.
I mean, as Patrick McLaughlin says, that there is a romantic side to this story, and it ticks the boxes, as you were talking about, Sean, at the start of the programme. It ticks a lot of boxes, and Celtic is an emotional club, isn't it? So it's built on romanticism and emotion. So yeah, for that reason alone, it's possibly worth exploring. But the fact that we've mentioned that he is a fledgling international, he is a good footballer, he has carved his own reputation and name for himself, but the comparisons would come thick and fast if he were to come back home, as the Retro Celtic said. Robert Gibson, Tony's wardrobe's on Anne's list. Quite like that, Robert. Excellent. But
it's back to reality with the wardrobe comments.
But it remains to be seen. And if he was on a list before, I think they're right that hopefully he was on a list and Celtic go and do the business properly. Then that's fine. There we go. Mark O'Connor, bring him home. That's the emotional pull of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the chance to get Larsson 7 on the back of a jersey, I think.
Well,
would appeal to
the B7.
People. Well, they might have to give him the 7, wouldn't they?
That's what Tim Manon's saying. Poor Giacomakis. Poor Giacomakis in that situation.
I'm sure Giacomakis would take the 9. I don't think he would bother with that. But you're talking about back to reality. We'll get back to reality. And Adam Montgomery is a player who looks like he could be going out on loan to St Johnstone, Sean.
Yep.
A good move for Adam.
I think it makes sense. I think it probably makes sense given the impending arrival of a left back, and if or when Jota signs, the competition for him at left wing as well would probably be too great. You got to remember he's under contract until 2025, so there's plenty of scope for him to use it as a platform, and that's either in the kind of Ryan Christie, Callum McGregor, Christopher Ayer way, or even the Kerr McInroy, Jackson Irvine, Jamie McCart, etc. way of at the very least helping yourself carve out a senior career, even if it's not at Celtic. I think it probably makes sense.
Alison, you like the thought of Adam Montgomery going to St Johnstone on loan?
Yeah, I would echo what Sean's just said. I think it's a sensible move, and also I think it's an inevitable move. I think he's at an age where he needs to continue his exposure to first team football. He had a bit of a loan spell up at Aberdeen last season. I think it's important that he continues to play competitive football, and I'm not sure there's going to be that opportunity in Celtic's first team this season.
Yeah, I'm always in favour of players going out and still playing against the same clubs, and getting the feel for the terrain and the league if they're going to come back in the future and play some part with Celtic. So it's a no-brainer for me. If Adam Montgomery isn't going to get those opportunities, as you say, Alison, I would lend him to St Johnstone in the hope that he shines there and comes back and can force his way back in.
That's the
I think you've got to ask the question. I think you've got to put him in the environment of first team football and then make an assessment on how he does and where you think he fits.
I think that's the same with Liam Scales going to Aberdeen as well. Yeah. And for that reason, obviously the fact that the Celtic players is the main reason, but I will be keeping an eye on where they play and how they do. It's interesting to me, not just in terms of are they getting game time, but that the system in which they're being asked to play, could it influence whether they are actually equipped to come back and threaten the first team squad or not. For instance, St Johnstone, I mean, they did at the tail end of last year switch from the back 3, back 5 to a back 4. Is there much point in Adam Montgomery going somewhere where he's going to be playing left wing back rather than left back to come back to Celtic and play a different style in a different position? Yep. That kind of thing. I think will all tie into whether these guys are equipped to come back to Celtic and actually challenge. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and something else to keep an eye on, Sean. 15-year-old wonder kid from Motherwell. They like our tag, don't they? Wonder kid.
Football manager speak, Tony. That's the generation you're dealing with now.
Bailey Rice attracting interest from both Celtic and Rangers, allegedly. The boy can't even sign a contract until he's 16 in October. Is that that?
That's correct, yeah.
I'm thinking behind that, yeah. So he must be a bit of a talent, Alison, if both Celtic and Rangers are keeping tabs on him. 15-year-old, wow, young Bailey Rice, a name to sort of watch out for now.
Yeah, just talking about being old and feeling old. I think if at 15 you're coming to the fore and people are chatting about you. I think clearly you've made an impression and you have fantastic potential, but I would stress at that age, that's what it is. It's potential. And I think so much is important at that age. It's still a very difficult age in terms of what's going on round about you. I think what you need is, the most important thing for players of that age is really sensible heads round about them, and making sure that your head isn't turned by the interest, because once you sign the first professional contract, for me, I think that's where your real hard work begins in terms of trying to follow your path, because, you know, you and I could all sit and rhyme off a number of players that were going to be the next big thing that just never quite realised the potential that they had. So I think at this age, the most important thing for him will be to find the right club, a club that suits him, the environment that suits him, and that he concentrates on meeting the potential that he's clearly got.
Sean, do you agree with that?
I think so. I mean, as you said, he's 15, so the key date is actually in October when he turns 16 in terms of a pro contract. I had a quick look at him. The data's limited, obviously, because of his age, but for Scotland under 17s, he's played left back and defensive mid. I suppose the argument for me off the back of that isn't necessarily to do with him. It's kind of the overarching stuff, which of the teams is he more likely to see a pathway to the first team at, Celtic or Rangers, if that's the two that are after him. And then on top of that, from a Celtic perspective, what would his recruitment mean for other youngsters already at the club in similar positions? Sure. I mean, the recent reshuffle in the B team and below is largely intended to make it a clearer pathway and a more coherent pathway through to the first team. So how does this type of move fit in? That's the kind of thing I'd ask.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's another deal that might come out in the fullness of time. If Celtic and Rangers are both interested and see, as you say, where he ends up. That's been an enjoyable briefing. Jordan Larsson taking up the majority of it, but it's a great talker.
No, it's Sean Martin, my name.
And I've been joined by two great talkers today. Thanks, Alison, for your contribution. Always appreciate it. Sean as well. Cheers. And thanks for the comments, guys. We try and read them out and flash them up on the screen. Keep you engaged. Hope you've enjoyed that today. We'll see you all again, and we'll do it all tomorrow. As you can see, running along the bottom, you can enjoy a free 30-day trial. You know what to do by now. Hit that subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And while you're at it, download the One Football app. You won't regret it. Thanks a lot. Have a cracking day. Take care.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Tony.